I would like to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Sarah Kaplan is the founding director, Institute for Gender and Economy, distinguished professor and gender and the economy, professor of strategic management, and fellow of the Lee Chin Family Institute for Corporate Citizenship at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management. Her current work focuses on applying an innovation lens to understanding the challenges for achieving gender equality and other social goods. She regularly advises corporations, governments, and agencies on policies related to environment, social, and governance issues such as board diversity, board governance, care work, employment, pay equity, gender-based analysis, and other topics. As a proud member of the LGBTQ+ community, Professor Kaplan has dedicated her work to supporting women and people who belong to all marginalized groups. So, without further ado, I would like to hand things over to Professor Kaplan. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you. Oh, you're muted still.
25 cents in the mute jar. I can't believe I made that. I knew, I was even thinking to myself, I'm going to owe 25 cents, and then here I am. But anyway, you would think, as you said, after all these years on Zoom, we would be used to it. But anyway, thank you so much for the introduction, and apologies for the Zoom error. But I'm really delighted to be here and excited to speak to the students live, and also to anybody who watches this recording afterwards. I'm just excited to share some of these ideas that come out of the work that I have done through the Institute for Gender and the Economy and beyond. So let me share my screen and just get started with some thoughts, but very eager to see what questions come up. So feel free to put the questions in the Q&A function. I'm happy to try to get to them as we go along or at the end. So it's a sort of long title for my talk, but what I really want to emphasize here is that I want to focus on product, service, and policy design. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and about how I think this gives us a different perspective on the conversation that we've been having about diversity, equity, and inclusion inside organizations and in our society. So, a motivator for this is that the challenge of inequality is more urgent than ever. There's many reports, whether it's gender inequality, racial inequality, indigeneity and reconciliation, disability, anything that you want to talk about, we have actually in some ways really plateaued in our efforts to make change. And so one of the things that we need to think about as a university, as researchers like myself, as educators like myself, as students like you who would be coming to university, is how can we address these kinds of issues in all the different kinds of work that we do. And I'm going to show you how these ideas would apply as broadly. And, I'm in the Rotman School of Management, which is a business school. We'll talk about some of those ideas, but we'll show how this applies in the world of engineering and science and technology, all these different areas. So this talk is for you no matter what discipline you're in. I want to start in talking about how I'm going to talk about gender mostly. Just because I only have a few minutes and I want to convey some ideas, but many of these ideas apply in other domains of inequality. But I just want to give you a sense of how in our society, in our economy, in our world, that signals of male gender can lead to overvaluation, or signals of female gender can lead to undervaluation. And so I'll give you a couple of different examples. Here's one. You give someone who has a job opening a resume, and in some of them you give them a resume, they're all the same, but some of them the title, the name on the resume is Jennifer, and in some the name is John, and it's for the same job, and it's exactly all the same features, and the only thing that's different about these resumes is the name of the person. And then you ask these hiring managers, which person is more is hireable. We don't actually do a comparison. It's actually randomized across many different people. Some people see John, some people see Jennifer. They say, just how hireable is this person? And we find that John, on average, is seen as more hireable than Jennifer. Okay, give you a different example. In the world of startup, we're very excited about entrepreneurship at the University of Toronto. We think about this a lot. In the world of pitching an investment to an investor. So this happens all the time when you're doing a startup. You have to pitch your ideas. You have to get investors excited about the work that you do. And so some researcher friends of mine did a study in which they tried to see why is it that so little venture investing money goes to women. It's about 6% or less of all the money that goes to new ventures goes to women founders. And some people say, well, the differences are just differences of quality. This is not really about any kind of gender bias. But in fact, what they did was they created an identical PowerPoint that was of a pitch, and they created an identical script. And then they gave this recording of this to investors, but they varied whether the script was narrated by a female voice or by a male voice. But each investor saw the exact same presentation with the exact same words, the exact same valuation, the exact same business idea. And then they asked these different investors who saw it, some saw the woman's voice, and some saw it with a man's voice. Would you invest in this startup? And the one with the man's voice was seen as more than twice as investable as the exact same business, but pitched by a woman's voice. And let's just give you a third example, just to say, is this really just about humans? Another study actually looked at computers, and they asked people to work on a computer, and they asked how it performed, and everyone said these computers perform about the same. And then they were asked, how much do you think this computer is worth? And some people were told that their computer was named Julie, and other people were told that their computer was named James. And it turns out that when they had a computer named James, they saw it as being more valuable than the computer named Julie. So this is just to give you an idea that this bias exists in all kinds of settings, whether it's entrepreneurship, values of products, things like that. And it comes about because of what we call implicit bias. And I'm going to talk about implicit bias in the brain, and then I'm going to talk about how it relates to how it gets systemically embedded. So many of you may have heard of the implicit association test. If you haven't, you can go to just Google Harvard implicit association if you want to take it yourself. And what it does is it tests automatic responses to see whether we have a bias. And so it kind of shows a computer screen like this, and it says, look at the word Michelle. Does it go on the right, then press the I key, or does it go on the left and press the E key? So does Michelle go with female or family, or male or career? Most of us will pretty quickly know that Michelle is female, and so we'll click the left key. However, when we mix things up and we put female and career on the left and male and family on the right, and then you see a word like salary, well, salary goes with career. But you'll get maybe delayed in thinking because salary isn't as associated with female. And so it leads to a little bit of delay in your response. So that's how we test whether bias is in our brains. And what it leads to is that most of us, more than 80% of us associate women more with family and men more with career. And why does this matter? It matters because then there's going to be these economic associations with that explains why we see this devaluing that I showed you. By the way, this isn't just for gender. You can also see the same thing for race. A similar kind of implicit association test will show you that people associate a preference for white versus black rather than black versus white. So these biases are in our brains. But what I want to show you is it doesn't really matter. We can't change our brains. We're socialized in a certain way. But what I want to show you is how it gets embedded into other things like our products and services and policies and what we could do about it. Okay, these biases can lead to things like toy aisles in toy stores where we have toys for boys and toys for girls. And so we see this kind of bias, and Barbie particularly relevant right now because of the Barbie movie. You can also see examples when it comes to car safety. So this is an example of a study that looked at the kinds of seats that we have in cars that are typically designed around a male crash test dummy kind of body. We just think all bodies are the same and the default is male. And what these bars basically show, the red line is how much injury you would get. And these are different. You don't have to know the details of this, but these are all different kinds of categories of types of injuries or effect of an accident on you. And what the gray and black bars show is how much more injured a woman would be than a man than the crash test dummy baseline. And what it shows is for all these different kinds of car seats, most of the time a woman is going to get more injured in an accident. In fact, the research shows that it's almost 50% more likely to be injured in a car accident than a man, simply because of how we've designed car seats. So if we were to design them in different ways, we might get different outcomes. Or here we give you a different kind of example. Here, health technologies. So most of you probably, or many of you might want or wear Apple Watch or something like that. What has been found is that these technologies often don't work as well on dark skin as light skin, because of the way the technology works to kind of sense your heart rate and things like this. And this could be really important when people are often, health insurance might be connected to you're using the app and being able to show that you're exercising or things like that. And if it doesn't work as well on dark skin, then that means those people could be more disadvantaged. And part of that is because the people who designed these technologies maybe were more likely to have light skin. They may have tested it on themselves and didn't notice that it might not work on other kinds of skin. Or let me give you another example, inequality in healthcare treatment. A company created a technology called Impact Pro that used artificial intelligence to predict who would benefit most from a particular kind of procedure, a health procedure, because they're trying to save costs and also do a better job in diagnosing and giving the right procedures to the right patients. But unfortunately, the algorithm was trained on data that actually had biases built into it. So it actually ended up recommending the high-tech treatment and the more expensive treatment to the white patients and the less expensive low-tech treatment to the Black patients. And in part, this was because it predicted that Black patients would cost less, and so their illnesses must not be that bad. But it didn't take into account that Black patients cost less because they don't often access healthcare services as much. They have less access to a system. They have general mistrust in a system that has not treated them well in the past. And so the data produced an outcome that actually led to more bias than should have been the case. So this is an example of how bias can get implemented inside an algorithm, inside a computer, but then that leads to these differential health outcomes for different people. Or face recognition technology, again, another artificial intelligence technology. It's been shown that it really does a very poor job on darker faces, and particularly darker female faces, and that people have been working with some of the large companies to help improve this, because if you imagine that facial recognition technology is not just used to open up your phone, but is used, by the police to identify potential criminals, that this could have really important societal impacts if you didn't think about how was the facial recognition technology really working. So, what I have been trying to do then with my research and the work of the Institute for Gender and the Economy here at the Rotman School is think about how we could take those insights and turn them into innovation challenges. How could we think about this as an opportunity to innovate in products and services? And I wrote an article in 2017. I keep having to change the date because we haven't gotten there yet, but the whole idea was to suggest that we don't have to just wring our hands about inequality. We can also think about how we can innovate to change the situation. And so let me give you some different kinds of examples about what those innovations might look like. So I talked to you about car accidents. Well, you have a company like Volvo that's innovating because they've actually created even pregnant crash test dummies. So when they test the safety of their car, they're creating safety that works for everyone, every kind of body, even pregnant women's bodies, because of course, pregnant women actually do drive. It's not just the male type body that drives. And so this is an example of a company that's actually improving the safety of their product, reducing their risk by innovating in the way that they design their vehicles and test their vehicles. So that's just one kind of example. Another kind of example is a fintech startup. So fintech stands for financial technologies. These are online, often app-based technologies that are in some cases substitutes for the big banks that you normally think of, or even the credit unions. And this one is called Ellevest. It's based in the United States. And what they did is they realized that investing was very often targeted towards men. There were systems that everyone thinks of the man as the investor in the household, not thinking about the fact that women earn money, women save, but that their profiles look very different because women often, because they are the ones, or any pregnant person who can get pregnant would be out of the workforce for a potential period of time. If they were to have children, that women tend to live longer than men. So there's a whole bunch of things about their profile that looks different. And what Ellevest said was, well, let's take advantage of that and design products and services for investors that actually meet the needs of women. And so what they're doing is eating the lunch of a lot of the big banks that haven't developed products and services that actually work for women, and actually are losing business because their products don't deal correctly with the way that women think about investing and want to do investing. So this is an example of a startup that could be an exciting new idea using artificial intelligence, using algorithms to design better products that work for everyone. Another company is an online retailer, again, in the US. They realized that there was a pink tax where razors for women, deodorants for women, shampoos for women, all those kinds of things are often priced higher in the store than the similar product for a man. And so what they committed to was pricing everything equally. So they said, it's a razor, it's a razor, it's a shampoo, it's a shampoo. And as a result, they got many more customers eagerly trying to purchase their products, and they got more repeat business, which is of course really important, especially when you're in online sales, is not just acquiring your customer, it's keeping your customer. And they got a lot more loyalty because they actually changed. They did an analysis of this, realized that women were paying this pink tax, and decided to change how that would work by creating a new product, a new service that would capture a market and create a more loyal customer base than they would have otherwise. Again, another idea of how you might innovate in how you go to market, because you've actually thought about it with a gender lens, you've thought about it with an inequality lens. Another example, this is a case study. We wrote a case study on Box, and we've written another case study on McCarthy Uniforms, a local Toronto-based company that makes uniforms. And when Vanessa Iorochi took over as president, it was a turnaround situation, a company that was doing very poorly. They needed to have a brand new strategy. And one of the things she did was she did a gender-based analysis and realized that a lot of their products, for example, uniforms, were not products that often a school bus driver, a lot of women drivers, whether school bus or any kind of bus, might not have uniforms that fit them. They might be told, just use the man's uniform. Okay, your hips are wider, so just cinch it up in the waist. The clothes never fit well. You look at safety equipment for women, for example, on a construction site, as you see in the picture here, safety gear. A lot of these things were leading to either discomfort on the part of women who were in these trade professions, or actually safety risks. And so what she did as part of the turnaround is create the products and services that actually would match the needs of the women in the field. And she describes the story of one bus driver who, for the first time when she tried on a uniform that actually was meant to fit her, cried because it was the first time in her career she had a uniform that actually fit her body. What does this lead to? Massive uptick in sales. This big turnaround, which was supposed to take 4 years to happen, takes 2 years to happen. Why? Because they've designed products and services that actually meet the needs of customers by doing a gender-based analysis and understanding that male isn't always the default, whether we're talking, any kinds of uniforms. So they also sell, and primarily sell, school uniforms. And one of the things they did was, it was always historically sold school uniforms with the pants weren't hemmed, so that you would have to hem them up depending upon how tall the kid is. Well, it turns out there's not that many people at home who know how to hem pants anymore, or don't even want to take the time. And so they innovated in creating a tape that you could just tape the pants up with. And this saved a lot of time, and again, increased the uptake of their product when selling into school districts. So again, another example of an innovation. Here's an example from MasterCard. A lot of people identify as non-binary or transgender. MasterCard realized that they shouldn't force people to use their dead name on their credit cards, for example. So they created True Name in order to be able to acknowledge that many people have identified with a different gender than the one that maybe is on their birth certificate. So again, another great product idea that they could innovate on. Or take Fenty by Rihanna. Many of you probably know Rihanna, superstar musician, but also created her own company to sell cosmetics. And one of the things this company was a huge, multi-billion-dollar success was that she created products that actually match the skin tones of every different kind of person. So where other cosmetics companies maybe didn't have all of the product range that would be needed for every different kind of skin tone, she went right to the forefront and spoke to that community, the diverse community of people who might really benefit from and want the products that actually match their skin. So again, creates this billion-dollar business that was an opportunity that was being completely ignored or unsuccessfully addressed by other companies. Again, another, huge innovation opportunity by thinking again about race, gender, and all of those kinds of intersections. Okay. Last example, Reina, again, right here in Toronto, is a condo building that is just being launched, designed by an all-woman team that you can see here. And what they did through a process of community engagement was design a condo that was going to meet the needs of families in a way that other condos had not, by designing them with multi-generational families in mind, by designing them with the need to park strollers in mind, a whole bunch of things that were very different than traditional condo design. And because it was designed by a whole group of women developers, women architects, women engineers, they were able to see the problem differently. They worked with the community and they came up with a very different kind of real estate development than you would have if you designed it in the traditional way. I'm looking out the window here at all of the buildings in Toronto, at the way that traditional condos get developed. So let me just take 1 or 2 more minutes to conclude. And then if there are questions, I don't see any questions coming in, but if there are, I would love to be able to answer them. What I wanted to, all those examples, there's a fire hose of examples, but I wanted to just run you through a whole bunch of different ways that these products and services can actually lead to either unintended risks or loss of sales because they did not take into account intersectional gender-based insights, or ways that if you did, you could come up with massive new innovative opportunities, often multi-billion-dollar opportunities for businesses if you just applied this. What we're calling this here at the Institute for Gender and the Economy is gender analytics, but we really think of the intersectional approach. So we're thinking about gender as it intersects with race, disability, indigeneity, and all of that. So what that means is you're going to analyze your business, your products, your services, and processes with that gender lens, and that's going to uncover hidden opportunities for innovation and improved effectiveness, as well as hidden risks. You'll also think about how those intersections really matter, that it's not just talking about gender, male, female, also thinking about beyond the binary to the non-binary, but also all the ways that might matter when you consider race and all these other kinds of intersections. How would you do that? I mean, I'm not going to go into detail. We have courses about this that could be very exciting. One is thinking about how the data are produced. I gave you that example of healthcare, where the data actually led to bias, examining it for biases. You're going to use qualitative and quantitative data to generate inclusive insights. You're going to incorporate these into design. And most importantly, what we like to emphasize is that you will collaborate and co-create with the users and constituencies and stakeholders in the work that you do. We're doing a lot of research around this here at the Rotman School. So not only in terms of our education, but in terms of our outstanding faculty who are doing work in this area, whether it's accounting people looking at whether lending is fair, whether it's marketing folks looking at household purchasing decisions of cars, whether it's strategy folks looking at how the gender of the researchers can affect the nature of the kinds of inventions that are made, whether it's finance faculty looking at stereotypes and how they lead to inequalities in entrepreneurial financing. These are the kinds of research that we're doing at the Rotman School and also more broadly at the University of Toronto to answer the kinds of questions that we've been talking here. And so what we've been trying to do, as I said in the beginning, we're flipping the script on inclusion. diversity, equity, and inclusion by saying, instead of just focusing on the talent management, the people inside the organization, let's focus on the output of organizations. Let's focus on the products and services. Let's focus on how that you reach the market. And you can create these innovative ideas that can lead to great businesses. And that's actually going to create demand for more diverse people inside your organization that are going to produce those products. So the flipping of the script is to not always just talk about diversity, equity, inclusion in the organization, but how we go to market, how we innovate, how we create new products. So that's the idea. And I'm really excited that I had the opportunity to share this with you and tell you a little bit about the work that we do at the University of Toronto in this area. I will close with an important quote about the nature of diversity, that diversity, the way it works is not just by saying, oh, we're diverse, we are a diverse team, but doing the work to understand how those different perspectives could really lead to these different and innovative insights. So this quote says, you have to do the hard work to get the creativity that you want. And you could think of this as like the pain of exercise, no pain, no gain. You have to do the work, you build the muscle, and then you're able to be more creative, more thoughtful, and more innovative. And so that's what I hope for you, and what makes it so exciting to me to be working here at the University of Toronto, especially with students potentially like yourself.